Coming back from Las Vegas this past weekend, WrestleMania. Me personally, coming back from 5 wrestling shows in 7 days. If you want to go back to here in Syracuse, starting the week out, just like many of the WrestleMania talent, I imagine, starting their WrestleMania week in Syracuse before heading to Las Vegas, specifically speaking of the TNA talent. The first, though, I want to say a big kind of attaboy to Tony Khan because, hey, how about this? You kick off WrestleMania week by, I understand for the whole week you're not stealing the headlines, but I tell you what, I was on my plane and I was taken back. Darby Allin becoming the new AEW champion, beating MJF a few days after the pay-per-view and him becoming number one contender.
Is that really an attaboy, though? Is it really an attaboy? I like, to me, I feel like there, like, even like the AEW sickos were not liking it. Like, it was like, MJF just had a hell of a match just the other night, and then you're gonna have him squashed by Darby Allin. A lot of the, and here's the thing, I read some of the internet wrestling community, the AEW diehards that they're AEW through and through, and I read more negative than positive. Like, I get you're trying to catch a little bit of that je ne sais quoi, so to speak. Trying to get a little oomph for the WrestleMania week because it's not your company. But that's not the way to do it. I thought it was negative. I thought, like, if it pays off good later on, maybe I'll change my mind on it. I just think if you're gonna have somebody drop the belt like an MJF, and you're not gonna, number one, you're not gonna have Darby Allin squash him because Darby Allin's 160 pounds, maybe. Like, it's not like, that just doesn't make sense to me, like, from a storyline perspective. And I like stories. I like a good story, and that's the issue with AEW. And to me, it proves that point once again. It's okay, cool. He won in his like home area because it was in Washington. I know he's a Washington guy. Like, okay, cool. Like, maybe it was good for that like group of people and some of the Darby Allin fans. But overall, I can't like, when you said attaboy, I'm like, I don't know about all that.
I guess it's just I guess a little bit of the shock value, a little bit of stealing some of the momentum. And I know we're going to get Darby Allin versus MJF probably at Double or Nothing next month in New York City for the rematch, which not technically, but I guess Queens is on Long Island. And MJF, we all know where
home
he's
game,
from.
I guess.
Yeah, so we can kind of switch that up with the Darby Allin winning in Washington and MJF winning.
So they're going to pass it back to. So like all this, and then they're going to pass it back to MJF. You think that's?
I mean, I don't necessarily know if that's going to happen, but I definitely know the setup and the story that's going to kind of lead into it a little bit. I guess just the idea that we have all of these foregone, future championship matches that sometimes, outside of big pay-per-views like WrestleMania, we don't ever, we wonder who's going to leave as champion. So for them to kind of pull that out a little bit, because there's an upcoming World Championship match going to happen at Backlash. They haven't made it official yet, but that is an idea of the same thing of like, now that you've won on the biggest stage, it's time to just get some repetition underneath you.
Do I blame Tony Khan and AEW for trying to do something during like WWE's WrestleMania week? No, of course not. Like, you know what? I know you're trying to do it. Like, controversy and all that. Controversy creates, cash, the whole Eric Bischoff thing. But to me, it was like, if you would have gotten a better reaction out of it, then I would have been sure, cool. Like, even if the AEW diehards like were like, yeah, cool, the sickos, so to speak, they're all in it, then cool, thumbs up, cool. But when you see the negative reaction, to me, it was maybe it was they had a grand plan and unfortunately, I think it backfired, to be honest.
Well, this WrestleMania week was a little bit different than others, I have to say. From last Tuesday until we're recording today, I have never personally seen or been as close to as many professional wrestlers, at least from a higher level. I've been on the indie scene and helped work some of those shows and set some stuff up. And there's been some people involved in those as well that, I've been in close proximity to and had opportunity to chat with. But with the TNA show that was happening literally in a building connected to my workday office that I do Monday through Friday, as well as 2 tapings of that show, meaning that they stayed in town for the week, or at least a couple days, on top of a flight to Las Vegas, which had Kevin Nash, the Warlord, who helped induct Demolition into the Hall of Fame, Kevin Nash, who helped induct Dennis Rodman.
Good question, not to cut you off. You mentioned Kevin Nash and what was it, Warlord, right?
Yes.
So wait, were they on the flight from Syracuse to Vegas, or was it
Incorrect. From Atlanta to Las Vegas.
Okay, so it was a connecting flight. I didn't think
They
Kevin
weren't
Nash
there.
rolled over
The
Brooke
next
here.
day, if I would have left late, as we had a discussion, I would have been on a connecting. I would have been on a flight from Syracuse with Tommy Dreamer, Moose, Mike's probably the whole nine yards, the Hardy Boys potentially, right? Depending on which exact flight, but it definitely if I got on a 5:30 or 6 a.m. flight the next day, I'm going to guess that it was full of a lot of stars. But my flight had Ted DiBiase Jr., Ted DiBiase Jr. specifically sitting near me, as well as Kevin Nash and the Warlord. Getting to Las Vegas, it was cool. There's all these meet and greets around town. Sheamus was doing a meet and greet in my hotel, so without any real, effort, I got to meet him. And I have to say, actually, I'm also anti these meet and greets. Mostly, paying and meeting these people. But give it up for Sheamus because I have to say, a real nice guy took the time to chat with me because I was wearing a RoboCop Sting shirt and took the time to talk to me about RoboCop and Sting and that Capital Combat from back in the day. And we talked about a shirt I wore a day earlier, which was a Shockmaster shirt. Talked about how he wants to go buy that shirt. Talks about how Daniel Bryan loves Botchamania, loves that kind of wrestling, and he's a huge fan. And was going to tell Daniel Bryan he needs to get a Shockmaster shirt. And I actually was walking away from him as he was talking. He wasn't pushing me away at all.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How much did you have to pay for that one?
Yeah. What's that?
Did you have to pay for it?
No, zero, nothing.
So he was just at the hotel, and you're just like, "Hey, what's up,
no, correct. He was doing a meet and greet at the hotel, but it was free. It was doing those. So WWE World has all the paid meet and greets, and then if they're outside there at a business, like they were all around town. They were at a Walmart, at a Cricket, at hotels, sponsoring. I think the specifically this was part of that Cody Rhodes vodka. They were trying to sell that at it. But other than that, I also think, too, potentially it wasn't an autograph. And I know that's the difference between me and a lot of people and maybe why it's not so, awful for wrestlers to get pictures with me because I only ever want a picture. I think the autograph people are what turned them off because they're trying to then turn that around and sell that into something.
You're genuine there not to make a profit off of them, so to speak.
Correct. Just there to meet Sheamus, not there to get him to sign some limited edition poster or something like that. So
that's cool that he actually had a great conversation. I've heard you hear the stories from people, over the years or like stuff on social media, like, yeah, this person's cool, this person's not so cool. It's just cool, from your experience that you just had with Sheamus. That's awesome. Like, that's cool that he was as cool as I thought he would be.
And a lot of people running around it with the GCWs, Joey Janela Spring Breaking Friday. So there was a lot of people coming and going because it was part of right next to WrestleCon, part of the collective. So there was a lot of people there that weren't involved. I mean, obviously, I talked to you, Brandon. George Kittle got himself involved.
Of course.
But other than that, a lot of people in the crowd like Noel Foley. And I find out because Mick Foley ended up showing up as well. But there was like Mike Bailey. There was obviously a ton of other AEW kind of talent that were kind of coming and going. Josh Barnett, Matt Riddle. The Good Brothers coming right from the Hall of Fame as we were leaving, as well as Frankie Kazarian leaving for the Hall of Fame right as we were coming. So a lot of talent there. One of the cooler ones on the way out, because I left immediately after Monday Night Raw, we drop off the rental car. We get on the crowded rental car bus. So I get the seat. I'm crowded in there, get that one seat. Didn't sit next to my wife because, it's kind of crowded and I just wanted to try to, get a seat. I get a seat. I'm sitting there. We're riding the rental car bus. All of a sudden I hear some Japanese coming from the guy right next to me. I looked over. It's Tozawa. It's Kairi Sane. It's Io Sky. All right there. Just sitting there on the rental car bus with me.
That's wild.
You know what I mean? And I was like, I gave my wife a look like, because I'm literally right next to them. And she's like, I don't think recognize it first, but she was like, don't bother them, that kind of thing. But yeah, they were on
the wrestlers appreciate that too, by the way.
Yes. So when we got off the bus, another person says, I know who you are, but I'm not going to bother you, kind of thing. To those guys as they grabbed all their stuff, as they grabbed their luggages with WWE Australia tour handles on them. So they've seen some miles on that luggage they were carrying. But then in the airport itself, while we're waiting for a flight, Tommy Dreamer was on my flight back. He was connecting in Detroit. And at the Chili's, right next to where where I was connecting on the flight was Jey Uso with Braun Breaker, Jada Parker, and Otis having dinner. And I have to say, if this was 1995, my weekend of wrestling would have been very well ruined. Seeing the $1 Million Man flying commercial, seeing Jey Uso and Braun Breaker having dinner together, as well as seeing Kairi Sane and Io Sky, whom I just less than 1 hour earlier watched wrestle in a tag team match on Monday Night Raw. You know, the Kabuki Warriors versus Io and Rhea. I just saw them go against each other, and here they are, like literally, like handing one each other snacks and going over their flight plan and things like that. So it would have kind of ruined kayfabe for me if I wasn't smart enough about it.
Luckily, we know that's dead. So
yes, it's pretty much dead. But it's kind of and it's kind of crazy because a lot of things coming off of this WrestleMania, and I know probably Brandon, you would have heard, not the ideal WrestleMania for the superstars themselves. I did my best not to be some of these people you're seeing online, but a lot of the wrestlers were staying at the MGM, which apparently, according to WWE, they did not have enough security, and that's the one negative with Las Vegas. There's a lot of positives, I have to say, regardless of them returning to the same place. At the end of the day, it's still a very positive place to host a WrestleMania because of its proximity to everything, because of just how it's a vacation. It is literally like going to a Disney festival held in Disney World.
Well, by the way, MGM, I believe that was a situation with CM Punk, Bayley.
It was a lot. Yeah, Randy Orton was getting bothered there. CM Punk smacking the phone out of the guy's hand and regarding the Bayley situation. Not enough security apparently, and the wrestlers were none happy.
I just don't like the fact that they were trying to paint CM Punk in a bad light. And then they did for a short time, and then later it was 12 hours later they're like, oh, here's the full video, and it's like, okay, he was defending his wife and his wife's friend who was also a friend of his.
Yeah,
like it was.
And I have to say, the person who the rumor got out that the person was like asking for an apology from CM Punk. Like, get out of here! Like, you don't put a camera in somebody's face in a private moment.
That's what makes wrestlers don't want to go out in public, is people like that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because, and Randy Orton, you could see him. There was a video of him like trying to get away from fans and not having, and they were just like making him try to like go off into like a stairwell to try to get away from people. That is the negative, right? They're at a public hotel. They weren't they actually said last year, because they were at the Fontainebleau, which was very well advertised, they were going to be there because all the events were there and they were there. It was actually much better because I think the hotel itself kind of set up a better security perimeter, and it was a little bit down the strip, not right involved with everything. Yeah. But it kind of set it up so that they could drive there, get off, and kind of have a little more privacy. The MGM is a very more public, more lower priced hotel. It's one that is not the 5-star ones that are more exclusive. So yeah, it was a bad look for them overall. But
what are your overall thoughts on the actual WrestleMania shows this
Well, the WrestleMania show, right? WWE pulls out today that which I guess is a cop out for. I mean, they said that it was successful. They said it was one of the highest grossing WrestleManias. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, there's how many? 42 of them? What do you mean one of the highest grossing? That's a way of saying this wasn't, they wanted to do what they do every year and put out an announcement that they broke records, that they did the best they've ever done, but they couldn't say any of those things. So they just had to be close to that and say, it's one of the best we've ever done. Who puts out that? Who puts out tonight's attendance is one of the best of all time? No, it's just a silly thing to say. If you're not breaking any sort of if you're not breaking the record, if it's not more people, more money, more whatever, then it's just it's a success. Sure.
Well, here's what I'll ask you. I think I don't know if we're going to agree on this. I feel like we will, because I think overwhelmingly night 2 is better than night 1. I think that was the general consensus. What do you think?
Night 2 was definitely better than night 1. I don't have as many negative things to say about night 1. I think obviously another thing that's going out there, which again, people are making more note about that they didn't in previous years, but I think they're getting more loud about, and that is the ratio of advertising to matches. And I get back and forth a little bit. I'm actually somebody who doesn't really care. Now, I would care if this was 5-hour nights, right? But I walked into WrestleMania knowing the show was going to run 3 to 7, knowing that there was going to be 6 matches on night 1 and there was going to be 7 on night 2. The show ran 3 to 7, and in one night, I think it ran 3 to 6:30. Okay, so it didn't take longer than I thought it would be, and I got all the matches that I thought they would be. And I don't think, this isn't like old WrestleMania, I don't think any matches were cut for time, meaning that people think, oh, I wish we had more matches, longer matches instead of advertising. Because back in the day, there were matches cut for time. There's a 3-hour window. You got to get it in. The Undertaker and Triple H go too long. Your women's match gets cut. That has happened before. I have a program from a WrestleMania where there's a match in there that never happened, involving some big stars like Naomi and Cody Rhodes.
I think there was only 4, maybe 5 matches that were above 15 minutes, which
No, they were very short, but I don't
crazy.
think necessarily that they were cut because of advertising. Because again, the timing, maybe in the first hour that was more structured, but after
Yeah,
that,
the
again,
ESPN stuff for the hour one, ESPN two, I
yes.
think night one, ESPN for night two. Like, oh, did you also? I don't know if you read the tea leaves out there. I don't know what the rumor and innuendo is, but a lot of people were making a big thing about Brock Lesnar's retirement there, and that how it wasn't exactly planned out that way.
I mean,
There
that
was
is
rumors
another
that
thing going
Gunther.
on. Here's the thing.
I heard Gunther. I heard Gunther at SummerSlam, and Brock said no thanks.
That stinks. I guess what I was hoping for during WrestleMania when Brock Lesnar was doing that was for Gunther to come out and to say no, this is not how this is happening, because again, that's his gimmick, right? And we're having a lot of wrestlers retire in a short span of time in very kind of unexpected ways. So it's perfect for this gimmick to go down, right? If Brock Lesnar is going to retire, good, because Gunther's currently doing that gimmick. AJ Styles wants to retire, perfect, because he's doing that gimmick.
On the flip side, though, Brock Lesnar, if this does and this is all indeed true, and he's actually done, him kind of handing the baton to Obafemi as the next big thing, so to speak. That's pretty cool, by the way. That's cool. Obafemi's pop was that crowd was
No, definitely. He's not Omos. I can tell you that much when it comes to.
No, there was a picture surfacing online. I think one of the wrestling newsletter type sites. They put up they were talking about Omos, but it was a picture of Oba. It's like, guys, come on, you don't know the difference here. What are we doing?
Well, yeah, because I mean, Omos went against Brock Lesnar to kick off night 2 of WrestleMania 3 years ago.
Yeah,
and I think Brock Lesnar actually got over in that one. So no, he's not Omos in that sense. He's not Great Khali or some of these other ones that they've built up as being, Brock Lesnar style opponents.
You know what I gotta say though? How could we forget the return after almost a decade of the one and only Paige, and she wins the tag championship with Brie Bella?
I have to say that was so the rumors were going around that Paige had signed with WWE prior to the show.
Yeah.
And that is kind of, one of the cool things about WrestleMania in the sense of, they're in town already and you can see them kind of in 2 different environments, like in the same day. You could have went to a Paige signing earlier that day, not affiliated with WWE, seeing her essentially not a WWE employee, and then later that day she's a WWE employee, and you never knew, like the Hardy Boys, right? They didn't just show up in WWE, but they like wrestled a WWE match to go up against a WWE show like the night before, kind of thing, for Ring of Honor, right? So you see Matt Hardy, you see Jeff Hardy, you see him like in that city, but doing their own thing and staying away from WWE, not a part of Access, not a part of the Fan Fest. And then a couple hours later, they're at WrestleMania on the stage, and just like the Hardys, winning the tag titles. So literally going from not here to being champions. And for so far, because Paige wasn't essentially a part of Monday Night Raw, we didn't have last year's return where Becky Lynch came back, won the titles, and then turned on her opponent. So far, so good for Paige. Maybe we'll see that on SmackDown.
I got to give you a shout out too, by the way. You said about 4 to 5 minutes in that Obafemi Brock Lesnar match. So kudos to you. I thought it'd be closer to 7.5. So after I watching that match and how quick it went, I was watching it with my dad. He was in town, and we ended up watching WrestleMania Night 2 together. He goes, "Boy, that was a quick match." I was like, "Yeah, my buddy Jared kind of called that one, just the other day." So kudos to you. You called
one match that I didn't think was going to be so quick is Stephanie Vaquer and Liv Morgan. It ended very anticlimactically. Nobody in the crowd was like expecting it because, you got to build up to the finishes. You got to build up, to the finale. And it kind of just ended, without really much pomp and circumstance. Stephanie Vaquer, I think, got one of her moves countered. Liv Morgan hit a move and the match was over. Do you like Liv Morgan winning the championship, and do you like the match?
The match was kind of for me. It was kind of it was okay. It was okay for what it was. I thought it could have gone a couple more minutes, closer to 10 minutes, not like 7. I think it could have been a little bit longer. The finish was a little clunky, like you just mentioned. Nobody was really, there wasn't really that, oh my goodness, the whole pop.
No near falls. Yes.
Yeah. It was just, there wasn't a lot of the false finishes, so to speak. A lot of those 2 counts that somebody hits a really good move and it's a 1-2 and 7/8 kick out kind of a thing. And like it was to me, it was anticlimactic. I did like the fact that Liv is the champion. And then I feel like, and we're kind of seeing a potential Liv Morgan versus Rhea Bloody Ripley like coming up because, Rhea Ripley,
I think we're gonna. Well, Night of Champions is what in a couple months. Isn't that where we see the? Or no, that's Crown Jewel, right? Where we see the champions. So
I mean, we could see those two facing off. I assume they both aren't going to drop their titles respectively in the next, between now and then. Honestly.
What do you make? Kind of switching gears. We staying on Liv Morgan though. We had some call ups this past week, but we also still had them involved in NXT. What do you make of that? Like they're called up, but then they're still like Sol Ruka, for example, seem to step up, face Liv Morgan. Maybe she's on the main roster, but then Zarya gets involved and she's back in NXT on Tuesday night. Finishing that stuff. And Joe Hendry, right, is on NXT. He wasn't on Monday Night Raw. They announced him for Monday Night Raw next week. I thought that was kind of silly, announcing Joe Hendry to show up on Raw.
Stop announcing WrestleMania. Stop announcing these things. Like they're supposed to be kind of pseudo surprises, I guess. Uh-huh. And Sol Ruka, I think I don't mind that as much because she displayed why she should be on the main roster. One. And two, she's finishing up business with Zarya in NXT. So once that's finalized, then I think she's going to be officially, on the main roster, on Raw like she was this past week. I thought she did a great job. I enjoyed that match, better than I enjoyed the Liv Morgan Stephanie Vaquer match. Honestly, I thought Sol and Liv did the I don't know what it was, but like the chemistry they had in the ring, it felt like they've done this dance a million times, and we know that's not true. It just looked good.
I think that probably was actually indeed a better match. One thing I'll say about WrestleMania that I liked, we didn't have any, from my understanding or from my view, I didn't see any, what you would say, the traditional like huge WrestleMania kind of entrances. But what I liked is more people got good entrances. We didn't just have like one person get an entrance. Like everybody seemed to get a good entrance. Some people bigger than others, but it seemed like I kind of like that more. Instead of just having like, Saudi Arabia pyro for 1 minute, you have littler pyro spread out over the whole show. And that's kind of what the entrance is here, right? Trick Williams gets a cool entrance. Obviously the main event people, Stephanie Vaquer, Penta got himself an entrance. Dominic Mysterio had a good entrance. Finn Balor had a really cool entrance. So they weren't like, again, like the John Cena, like bringing out like a school bus with like 50 lookalikes and like huge bands. But they were all unique and they all were cool. Becky Lynch had a good entrance. AJ Lee just came out with a bunch of kids, but I thought that was cool. It does separate itself without having to be huge.
CM Punk's was kind of cool too. Like I didn't mind that.
CM Punk's was kind of cool. He using his entrance theme in which he came out to in the Indies. Which was cool for WWE to allow like him to do that. And again, nothing too crazy. Obviously, he did kind of the John Cena heel entrance. He comes out and he did the same on Raw, comes out to darkness and then just stands there. And then his music hits when he does.
It's clobbering time. Then the music hits.
Yes. Well, I guess the idea is, though, obviously when he came out in 2023 at Survivor Series, his music sure definitely hit before he came out. He didn't just walk out there.
That was a nice touch.
And I do have to say, and it is kind of a shame that next year we most likely will not have the same circumstance. But I can say, yes, there was less people at this WrestleMania than there have been for many WrestleManias, most stadium WrestleManias. But I don't know if it's just all the accoutrements to go around WrestleMania. There was just that many people in there to be overall in Las Vegas for wrestling and not just WrestleMania. But it 100% did not feel any different. And I know the numbers may say like 50,000 versus 80,000 in some years and things like that. But I guess when you're walking down the Las Vegas Strip and you are out and about, there is you can't quantify that. And I just personally, it's hard to quantify in general. When I've gone to a stadium when there's 75,000, or I've gone to a stadium when there's 100,000 for a football game, it doesn't look any different. I like that 30,000 doesn't change anything really when it comes to the look, to the feel. I don't feel at a 70,000 stadium like it's not as big. Like I feel when you're watching the Super Bowl at the Cowboys Stadium, which can get 100, or at MetLife Stadium when it gets 70. It feels the same, and the presentation.
It looked fine. It looked fine.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't the big pie in your face like people thought it might be for WWE, right? I looked at last year's pictures, and the set last year was a little smaller. So you can see that they only really tarped off literally behind the set, and this year they kind of tarped off more around the set. And I did see during the show some non-TV sides, like in the upper deck on the 400 level, not camera facing. Like like there were like 3 or 4 rows completely empty. And night two, not the case. Night two was definitely a full house for what they were selling.
Yes.
But yeah, it felt like WrestleMania. There was nothing about being there. It did not feel like 2021 WrestleMania when I went to Tampa and they only had 25,000 and they had no access and they had no Hall of Fame. They had none of that. That felt like going to just like a pay-per-view or something in a town. This felt like WrestleMania through and through, in every arena, in every casino, in every hotel, in every restaurant. Like it felt like WrestleMania. The getting out, you were crammed person to person, not being able to get out that easy. Like the amount of souvenirs they had for sale, things like that. It was indeed WrestleMania weekend. And it's a shame we're not going to get that next year. Because it's just not really probably possible to get that next year when it comes to not just WWE side of things, but everything that's going on. And I actually, weirdly enough, on my way out of Monday Night Raw, ran into a fan who was wearing a Royal Rumble 2026 shirt, which made me question, were you? And I caught because it was a different looking shirt. Of course, they give them the better merch. And I was like, that's a really cool shirt. Were you at the Royal Rumble? And he was at the Royal Rumble, showed me his picture with green shirt guy, and talked about how he is from Riyadh and things like that. And he told me to come to WrestleMania next year, and told me, as for the Americans who have a problem with it, he said, well, fuck him. That's what he said. He doesn't really care.
Hey, I think that was our first F word on the Heel of the Face podcast.
But that's what he said. He said that, that's my opinion. I get it. It's in his hometown. He didn't do anything, though. I can tell you. I didn't really dive too deep, but he didn't give me any kind of answers as to why we should all feel better about it being in Saudi Arabia. Just essentially, he's just said, hey, it's been open to the public for 10 years, so you can come by. Well, yes, we know we can come. Yes, we know that. But you saying... You saying that we are allowed to come since 2015, since Seth Rollins cashed in Money in the Bank, we're now allowed to go to a country. I think that's the problem, because there's lots of countries that people have been allowed to go to a lot longer than that. It's not, oh yeah, they don't behead people as of, when you met your current girlfriend. Like, you know what I mean? Like as of then, they don't do that anymore.
Plus we have a lot going on in that part of the world right now.
Currently, yes.
Yeah. So we got to see how that goes. Like, who knows if things, not to go down that rabbit hole, but real quick, I mean, if things escalate to a certain point, WrestleMania might they might have an issue potentially, and they may have to move it back to the States.
I mean, we will see. I tell you what, because WWE, I think they're really gung ho. We've seen them before about some of these things where it's been tougher. There's been like no fly, I think, during one of the pay-per-views that they still went to. Right, they closed it off for Americans, I think, on one of the previous pay-per-views that they still actually ended up going to. So I don't see that happening. I think it's too, and it's not because it's a great place to go. I'm not saying it isn't, but. I think it's way too much money. They had a literal tourism booth at WrestleMania telling people about how they can go to WrestleMania, and pamphlets and things like that, and all the stuff that's offered. And again, it's not that they're going out of the country, because that is definitely not a thing. If WrestleMania next year was in Tokyo, was in Sydney, was in Cape Town, South Africa, I'd be going like if it was in Syracuse, New York, where I live. Right, I'd be really no difference. I'd be going, Tokyo, wow, I can't believe
you go to Tokyo.
I go wherever it goes. Yeah, a flight's a flight, right? You got to save up. You do the same as you do every year, right? You get the time, you get the money, you put it in order. Maybe
Tokyo
you got to do
fun. I think Tokyo would be a lot of fun.
You got to put it maybe in a little bit different order than you do some other years. You got to do a little more planning. But the point is, it would still happen the same. And I think for a lot of fans, it would still happen the same going to these other places. It's
just going to go to the Tokyo Dome someday.
Someday. I mean, maybe for a Wrestle Kingdom and not WrestleMania, but we'll see. It's just a shame. And what's even more of a shame is finding out today, Nashville announced that they were originally scheduled to host WrestleMania next year and be the first event in the new stadium. But the dates didn't work out, is what they were told.
That sucks. Nashville would have been a lot of fun.
Nashville is a great place. It's not. It's like Las Vegas light. It's its own version of Las Vegas.
It's country. It's country Vegas.
Yes, yes, and again, a brand new stadium in a warm weather place around April. It's going to be 70 degrees. Around the clock, somewhere like that.
Comfy weather.
Comfy weather. So it is a shame. that it is going to a place. It's not necessarily not welcoming or anything like that. But I actually asked the guy. I said, but you got to admit, not a lot like Vegas. And he's like, oh no, I think Riyadh's a lot like Vegas. And I might say in the sense of lights and brightness and all that. But I can tell you, I've never been to Riyadh. There are not topless women with walking up and down the strip in Riyadh. I'm just gonna say I've never been there. Right? There's also not people literally walking around Riyadh with big bottles of liquor and no clothes on. Just having. There's probably not that. I'm just gonna be out there and believe
Yeah, I don't
so.
think so either.
So when he says it's a lot like Vegas, I'm like, I think for the most part, it's pretty much the opposite of Las Vegas. I think that's kind of the issue. But our two main events, I have to say, this is the first year in WrestleMania since they've been doing the two nights. Maybe you can disagree with me. This is the very first year that both main events could be interchanged. We talked about this before about being, one main event is obviously the main event and the other main event could not be. Kevin Owens hosting the KO show with Stone Cold Steve Austin wouldn't get people to stick around for eight hours of WrestleMania. I don't think, right? The Usos versus Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens, that is not going to be the capper of your whole WrestleMania weekend. It's a great match. It's a great to be continued moment, but it's not going to cap things off. And I think because in the two-night WrestleMania, this is the first time we've had the world title main event each night individually. We've had some open tonight, like last year with Jey Uso and Gunther, and Bobby Lashley and Drew McIntyre one year. But and while yes, night two's main event was better, I do think if you would have switched them, it wouldn't have made much of a difference in regards to not feeling like that match deserves that spot. Right? Am I wrong there? I think either you could have had Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton finish out the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely could have. I mean, I think the interchangeability of those two matches definitely could have worked.
As long as they're the same, I guess, too. Specifically meaning that, you're not lessening the CM Punk versus Roman Reigns match, which indeed was the better match.
I mean, you think Roman Reigns CM Punk was the better match?
I think so. It's the only match of the 4 world title matches between women and men that didn't change hands was Cody and Randy Orton. So every other one, obviously 2 new women's champions, and then with Roman Reigns, I think it was the better match for sure. I'm not saying, but Cody and Orton put on a good match. Obviously, that was the night one match of the night for sure. I think. Night one, you got a better match than Cody and Orton.
Yeah, I would say, you know what, I have to say yes, because night one, you know what, I think I did actually say that to you. I think this match, I think I literally said to you, this match saved night one.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember. I was thinking about it for a second. I was like, no, we texted, and I said to you, and you weren't as critical as I was, because you didn't think it was the worst you've ever seen, but I just night one was it was kind of meh for me. Obviously, the main event was cool. The whole punt by Orton after the match, like that whole thing that was, and no more Pat McAfee. Like that's part of the stipulation. I didn't see that coming. I thought Pat would be around for a pay-per-view coming up, but doesn't look like that's the case, because he went on to Pat McAfee show this week right after Mania and pretty much said, Thank you for everything that's happened in wrestling. I'm done. Bye. Maybe it's a story. Who knows? We'll see. But night 2 was definitely the better night for me. If it wasn't for the main events, the best match other than those 2 main events, it's got to be the Intercontinental match. Like that was
between Trick.
I'm sorry. U.S. title.
Between Trick and Sami Zayn.
No, it was Intercontinental. I had to think about
the ladder match.
Yeah, in the ladder match. That's what it was. Yes, I had to think about it. I was like, because a lot of times I get U.S. and Intercontinental because they're at the same level. I get those interchanged. The ladder match, Penta retains. That was cool. Honestly, I thought the young OG, I thought Javon Evans was going to win. I really did. And then Penta out of nowhere. It was a great match. Had a crazy spot there with the Mexican Destroyer on JD on the ladder. I will say, though, and I was pointing it out to my dad, and I showed him, I was like, this is why Penta and JD are professionals, because JD was protected all the way through. If you looked at the replay, absolutely was protected. It looked cool, but if you looked at it, his head wasn't going into the ladder kind of thing. Like Penta, JD, it was well executed. Kudos to them on a hell of a spot there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Seth Rollins and Gunther put on a really good match. Finn Balor and Dominic was pretty entertaining when it comes, matches. So I like that one as well. But, I think the main event, CM Punk, Roman Reigns. I like, like no interference, that kind of thing. Obviously, the first night we had a lot of stuff going on with Orton and Pat McAfee. I was pretty surprised, that Pat McAfee would kind of put
Hey,
himself
I
out
did
there
say
like
it was
that.
going to be clean. I did say it was going to be clean. I will give myself credit for that. You were right on the Obafemi
Mhm.
Brock Lesnar timing thing. I did. I'm pretty sure I said Roman Reigns match CM Punk will be a clean finish. And it was, and I'm happy about it.
Yeah, it was, and obviously, what's great about wrestling is obviously, regardless who you're rooting for, you don't really care either way. I was rooting for CM Punk to win because I like CM Punk, but while Roman Reigns had his championship for 1,000 days, I was rooting for him the whole time. So these are like two people you both like, regardless who's heel or who's a face, and it's not like gonna make you. It's not like
It
when you leave
worked
a
out
sporting
well.
event when your
It
team
worked out
loses.
well. It worked out well. And overall, the main events delivered each night.
Mhm.
There were some things that could have gone better, I think, overall. But there were some really cool moments. Welcome back, Paige. Obviously Obafemi's got the rocket pack strapped. He's going to the moon at this point. And overall, it wasn't the worst Mania I've ever seen, but it wasn't the best. If I had to grade it, I hate doing grades. I give it a solid B. It was overall a decent show.
One thing that I do miss, and again, I don't think it has really anything to do with the advertisement. I think it's just WWE's way, but they don't really do like the backstage segments anymore. Back in the day, they'd interview somebody, and I haven't done it for a while. I feel like it's been not just this year, but a lot. Where like you have Jonathan Coachman, WrestleMania 18, and he's got The Rock before he's about to head out to his match, that kind of stuff. So we don't really do that anymore. So I guess I do miss that aspect of WrestleMania. I mean, it does. Yes, it was a little homogenized with a lot of the faces winning, but that's kind of always the thing. And at least, regardless what you thought of the matches, all the matches felt like they deserved to be on WrestleMania because, for the most part, there's been a lot of, Jerry Lawler versus Doink the Clown and his team kind of nonsense. Everybody kind of fit in where they were supposed to fit in well. Every match looked like it belonged. But we'll kind of close out the show with Monday Night Raw after. It looks like we're going to get Fatu versus Roman Reigns at Backlash. Obviously, I thought, we were going to get that big tag match at Backlash between Cody and Jelly Roll. I guess we're not getting that. So that swerved us a little bit. But what do we think about Roman Reigns versus Fatu? And does Fatu have a chance?
Fatu has zero chance. Zero chance. I love Fatu. Jacob Fatu is one of the most entertaining guys in the business these days. And I like what he did. He cut a nice promo with that segment with Roman Reigns. I thought that was well done by everybody involved. I think what's going to happen is by the end of that night, he's going to acknowledge Roman Reigns as his tribal chief. And I don't know if this is Bloodline 2.0, whatever they're going to do this thing, but he's going to join. I think he's going to join forces with those three boys.